I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Kathleen McClung. I'm the Associate Director of the Soul-Making Keats Literary Competition. I'm also the sponsor judge of the sonnet category. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our Prose Awards event for the winners of the 2021 contest. What I'll be doing is introducing each judge of each category of the prose categories, and then the judge will speak briefly, and then she will introduce the winners of her category, and she'll name the names of the honorable mentions in her category. We had to make an executive decision to have only readers, only winners read, because otherwise we would be here till 3 o'clock in the morning, because there's been so many wonderful pieces submitted. I'd like to first thank the members of our Soul-Making Dream Team that have worked for the last couple of months to put together today's program. First of all, a big thank you to Steve Long, who is our technical director and troubleshooter par excellence, and just an all-round wonderful human being. So thank you so much, Steve. I'd like to thank Elise Kazanjian, who unfortunately is not able to be with us today. She's under the weather, but Elise worked really hard to help produce these awards events. So thank you so much to Elise. We're sending healing energy to you today. I'd also like to thank our event co-chairs, Angie Minkin, who has done just a fantastic job coordinating and organizing the prose event. So thank you so much to Angie. And to our other co-chair, Ellen Woods, who worked so hard to put together this earlier poetry event. So thank you so much to Ellen. And finally, a big thank you to our contest founder and director, Eileen Malone, who's been brilliantly running our contest for over 25 years. And I'm going to turn over the mic and the Zoom camera to Eileen now, who's going to just briefly give a kind of quick overview of the Soul-Making contest, and then we'll proceed with the winning reading. So here's Eileen.
Hello, and everybody. I recognize so many names and I'm attaching them to faces, and it's so neat. A lot of you are very familiar with the Soul-Making Keats literary competition. And for those of you that are not, we started in 1992 as a little poetry contest. Since then, we have evolved. We've added more categories. We've had some judges and sponsors join us along the way and stay with us. They're still here. We've had some judges and sponsors join us and leave and come back again later. And we've had some winners who we just grabbed and brought aboard. So we're very liquid. We're flowing this way and that way in this time of many, many changes. Who knows if we'll be doing Zoom awards henceforth, or whether we will go back to the Corrette Auditorium at the San Francisco Main Library. The people at the Corrette are waiting for us. They're begging us to come back. They love having us. People fly in from all over the country to pick up their certificate and their check, but really to share their stuff, their creative works live with other people. That's why we're here. We're here to validate, to motivate, to inspire, to encourage, to kickstart people out there who are hesitant about really writing heavily and putting it out there. It needs to be out there. Really, everybody, don't hesitate to submit to places. We'll do our part. Our part right now is doing the Zoom. And I think from 10 days away from now, it'll probably be on YouTube. So we'll help get the word out there. And for those of you that have been wanting to write for so long and haven't really had a chance because you've been living your life and putting food in the fridge, and now you're trying to take some time, this is the perfect place for you, because we welcome everything that's, and I want to quote this generous, open-minded, and sincere. That's what we look for in our works. And that's what gets the prizes. And that's what the words that were used to describe the poet John Keats after his early death. And of course, our theme is, let me read it. Some say that the world is a vale of tears. I say it is a place of soul making, and you will see when you hear some of these works how that theme has been stretched and pulled and pushed and actually innovated and expanded. So we're delighted to have this today. Let's get the show on the road.
Thank you so much, Eileen. First person I would like to introduce to you is Rita Williams, who is the young adult prose judge, and she will be sharing information about her winners. So please welcome Rita Williams.
Thank you, Kathleen. And it says I'm not unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't know why it's still on the screen. I just wanted to say briefly that I started doing this way back when. Eileen asked me if I would sponsor young adult prose. And my son was in high school then, starting high school. He is now a father, an attorney, and 35 years old. So that gives you some idea of how long I've been doing this. And it's because I really believe in nurturing young people. And I think back to my days in Lubbock, Texas, and if it hadn't been for some teachers who thought I had a writing talent, and that was my ticket out of Lubbock, Texas, I would still be there, probably with about 80 million children today and living in Lubbock, Texas. So I know how important it is. And today, when young people text and don't do whole sentences and stuff, it's just so important that they are understanding and valuing the written word. And I cannot tell you how uplifted I am when I read these entries. And I wish you could read all of them. But let me just say that I will read the honorable mentions and then tell you the other award winners. And we do luckily have one beautiful reader. We have for honorable mentions, Luciana Yesquen, and she had 2 entries that were honorable mentions, My Tiny Miracle and a Palace, Jasmine Mintz for Women, Alexandra Steele for Expect the Unexpected, Hannah Jett for In a Mere Minute, Sanana Owens for My Sanative, Brady O'Beer for My Walk with Faith, Kiera Thompson Morris for The Tall, Skinny, Brown-Skinned Girl, and Nora Jett for Snap. And congratulations to all of our honorable mentions, and also to our 3rd and 2nd place winners, who unfortunately are not able to be with us today to read their stories. But let me congratulate 3rd place winner Evan Branham for The Day to My Night, and Quentin Jones for a very moving 2nd place, The Ship That Sunk. But I am so delighted, and I've been corresponding with her the last couple of days, that our 1st prize winner is with us today. And you've already heard her name because she already was mentioned for 2 honorable mention winning entries, but she also won 1st place. She is very talented, Luciana Yesquen, and she will read A Requiem for Our Death, which did win 1st prize. And let me just remind you, she was 14 years old when she wrote this. 14, think back when you were 14. She's now just turned 15. So I think you're going to be as moved as I was with this entry. Luciana, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Should I start?
That's great. You're doing great.
A Requiem for Our Death. There is no such thing as the beginning or the end. There simply exists the middle. So there's no reason for me to begin with how we met, nor with how we died. I can start wherever I want. I choose to begin with when I woke up on the water's shore, after we committed suicide on the bridge. The sand was warm but unfriendly on my skin, grating me awake. The space behind my bottom teeth felt irrevocably dry, and my eyes were difficult to open. I felt naked despite the fact that I wore clothes. I felt vulnerable. It was queer. The only time I seemed to feel so exposed was around you. Only you could make me feel that way. But you were not there alongside me on the shore. It was then that I pieced together the earth-shattering fact that it was only you and not I whose life used to continue after our fall on the bridge. I suppose this is that thing that we commonly describe as denial. It was perhaps the greatest moment of my life, save for the moment we locked eyes. I did not feel any succinct sentiment nor a cohesive thought I could continue to pore over. Despite the fact that all I've done my entire life was think, I refused to do even that. So it was beautiful, that short frame of time. Those are all trivial matters, however, but let me say this. If there is a God out there, I can only assume he loved you dearly. Your angelic smile made even I weep long rivulets of tears. I can only speak so calmly now because I was taught by a certain you to reflect constantly. The meaning of my life is not in how I analyze my emotions as I feel them. It is to allow myself to feel the utmost savagery of them now and reflect on them later. My reflection was yet to come as it all truly did begin to hit me when I arrived home. I couldn't feel it at the time, but my clothes were drowned in water. I was shivering, dripping down the ocean water seeped into the floorboards we used to sleep on. The only sound in a room dressed in grief. At some point, my euphoric state of oblivion was disrupted. I began to hear a wailing sound in the quiet corner of my mind. It grew louder and louder. With each decibel in volume, it only grew more strained with grief. With a severe emotional undertone to it, I could not figure out what it was for the life of me, and subjecting myself to its noise to analyze it any longer would have killed me. It was my own voice. I was screaming, crying, rather, like an infant's first glimpse of the world around them, absolutely rattled by the filthiness of the reality, and stricken, affected by the reflex to cry. I screamed your name out of love to nobody in particular as I realized time had passed agonizingly quickly. I screeched your name over and over and over. I screamed it in the hopes that perhaps every gasp might become tangible and converge together right there on the floor, carefully reconstructing my image of you and bringing you back to where I wanted you. But such things are not occurrences of the universe. So perhaps I cried some more. Perhaps I threw our half-eaten dinner plates across the room. Perhaps I destroyed the home we made, and perhaps, after bleeding my fingers from crushing our different trinkets of life, I could not even sleep in our bed. So I lay myself down and slept, crying my throat raw as I pieced together your voice whispering goodnight to me. I could just barely do it underneath the bog of my misery. This was my death, our death. The death I did not imagine I would have, nor the death I craved, but you had a funny way of gifting me such complex, excited emotions when I least expected them. You gave me more than I ever could have thought of desiring. You taught me to love. I absolutely despise you for that. Yet, for the rest of my life, I can only hope some hopeless comes up behind me and kills me so I may find your heart again. Until then, I will be waiting. For the duration, your beloved.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It was beautiful. Thank you, Luciana. Very moving. Thank you for being with us. And I know we will continue to hear from you, whether in youth categories or adult.
Thank you very much, Luciana, and thank you to Rita. I'd now like to introduce to you Lyzette Wanzer, who is the judge for the intercultural essay category. Welcome, Lyzette.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. So this is my, I believe, third year judging this category. I had entered it for many years before that, winning in different years. What I'm looking for in this category is tight, concise writing. I'm looking for sentences that are slim and economical. I'm looking for every sentence advancing the narrative. I'm looking for clean, compelling ways to convey your point in your sentences. I'm looking for a lack of reliance on adverbs and no excess or gristle to impede the momentum of the narratives. So, and also both proper grammar and correct punctuation do matter to me. And as I have quoted on my judge page, I say, remember what Anton Chekhov said, don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass. So we have I believe, two of our readers today. My third and second prize winner was David Stewart of Palo Alto. That's just how it turned out. We read these manuscripts blind, so I don't know which entry David will be reading. And then our first prize winner, Gail McCormick of Seattle. Her winning essay is Zoya's Dinner. And then David Stewart's second prize was Waging Peace. And his third prize essay was The Delta.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Great. All right, I will start with, I guess the third prize winner, I think, was The Delta. So I'll start with that one. Thank you. After a 3-hour drive north of Saskatoon, I passed a sign marked Elk Ridge Resort and saw an imposing brick lodge ahead. It was the summer of 2016, and I was in Canada for a consulting gig to support the University of Saskatchewan's annual faculty leadership retreat. I parked by a log cabin tucked in the woods. I'd arrived at the conference venue at Waskesiu Lake, located inside Prince Albert National Park, a quintessentially Canadian place name, an Indigenous named lake hedged inside a British named park. I dropped off my bags and reported to the conference center. 100 faculty members were already milling about, grabbing coffee, prepping for workshops. Soon the conference sessions kicked off and I jumped into action, moderating panel discussions and collecting audience feedback. Experts shared the latest trends in higher education, such as online classes or new ways to share lab space. The sessions continued through the afternoon and into the following day. After the final session ended that second evening, I rode a shuttle bus to a large outdoor tent in the woods to attend a closing dinner. I loaded up my paper plate with ribs and sat at a round table near the front, curious to hear how the university's president, Peter Stoichev, would tie together the many ideas that had come out of our discussions. But instead of offering his own conference wrap-up, Stoichev invited 4 young scholars to present an overview of their recent ecological fieldwork in the Saskatchewan River Delta, which is North America's largest inland river delta. I wasn't sure what this had to do with our conference, but Stoichev's surprise certainly got my attention. The scholars explained that before they even started their fieldwork, they spent a year just getting to know the Swampy Cree, the indigenous people of the Delta. Only then did they begin gathering data using a blend of science and a method called Indigenous Ways of Knowing, or IWK, a holistic approach to knowledge that sees people as interconnected with land and communities. Because IWK was not endorsed by the faculty, these scholars had risked tenure by using the method, but they'd persisted because they believed the Swampy Cree's lived knowledge of the Delta should be included in the scientific record. Stoichev then invited a Swampy Cree trapper on stage. Gary Carriere had a weathered face, a graying mustache that curled down his chin, and a quiet charisma that captivated the room. At first, I thought these researchers were just another generation of scholars telling Indigenous people how to manage their own land, Carriere explained in a deliberate tone. But it didn't take me long to see that these folks were different. They didn't just talk, they listened. They had really come to the Delta to bring Indigenous stories into their science. He closed with an eloquent tribute to the scholars' courage and dedication. Several faculty members rose from their chairs and urged the university to consider IWK-informed research in tenure applications. As I absorbed the presentations, I was impressed at how Stoichev had deftly highlighted 2 of the retreat's themes, indigenization and innovation, simply by letting young scholars and a Cree elder tell their stories. Thank you. I guess I'll just jump right into the next one then. All right. So the next one is called Waging Peace. It's a different setting now. I'm not in Saskatchewan anymore. I'm in Lyon, France. After lunch, I rejoined my breakout group upstairs, where we were about to discuss best practices in policing immigrant neighborhoods during this post-9/11 era. As we kicked off a discussion, a 20-something American woman wearing a conference badge approached me. "Excuse me, a gentleman over there said you speak French. We have a lively discussion going on and our translators are having trouble keeping up. Could you serve as a translator?" Wow. First, no wine at lunch. Now, no competent translators. This Bush foreign policy team was a real winner. But since this was a diplomatic gathering, I kept those thoughts to myself. I wasn't trained as a translator, but thanks to my bilingual Quebec upbringing, I figured I could do a decent job of it. So I pulled up a chair to my new table. On one side were two African Americans with LAPD Community Relations and Columbus, Ohio Chief of Police, respectively, on their name tags. They had short haircuts and were dressed in civilian suits and ties. Across the table sat two smaller men with groomed mustaches, wearing the formal blue gendarmerie of Montpellier, France. One gendarme pleaded for my intervention straight away. Quand nous entrons dans les quartiers immigrants, he said, making eye contact with me. He was gesticulating and rolling his R's with a Provençal flair. I translated to English in real time, glancing at the African Americans as I spoke. When we patrol these immigrant neighborhoods, the gendarme continued, nous entrons avec de la force et nous tapons très fort. I translated again. We go in with a show of force. We strike hard. The African Americans were holding their heads in dismay, moaning, no, no, under their breath. When I finished speaking, the LAPD guy spoke first. No, man, you can't do that, he said, looking imploringly at me, then at the gendarmes, then back to me. Tell them, when I was a kid in LA, that's how the cops came into my neighborhood. The gendarmes twirled their mustaches. Although they hadn't understood everything the officer had said, they were taken aback by his emotional response. They turned towards me and listened intently as I translated. The LA officer continued, and what happened is, over time, the cops became the enemy. We were trained to hate the police, to fear them, and it turned into a kind of war mindset. No one on their side was listening to anyone on our side, and vice versa. The Ohio chief of police was nodding in approval. I repeated their advice back to the gendarmes in French. They were hanging on every word. One of them was taking notes while the other spoke up. Mais comment voulez-vous qu'on fasse notre boulot? He asked. I translated again. But how are we supposed to do our jobs? It's called community relations, the LA officer said, enunciating and pointing at his name tag. Yep, the Ohio police chief chimed in. You go into neighborhoods when everything's fine to get to know folks on your beat. That way, when a problem comes up later, you can get information without turning folks against you. The back and forth went on another 20 minutes. Afterwards, the gendarme who'd been jotting notes found me in the stairwell. Merci, he said. The American perspectives had given him lots to think about. I shook his hand and wondered if maybe we Americans had achieved something here after all. It was a small step, but one gendarme had started to see things in a different way. Now, if only I could talk to someone about serving Châteauneuf-du-Pape at dinner tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. That was just wonderful. I love hearing these read out loud after having read them on paper. Thank you, David. And is Gail here?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. So Gail will be reading Zoya's Dinner. Gail is our first prize winner from Seattle.
Thank you. A zing of excitement hit me when I saw at the center of the table the crystal starburst candle holders and violet tapers I'd brought from the US to Zoya. These were no ordinary tapers. They were world peace candles. I'd been waiting for the perfect moment to share the story of the candles with the Yarmolskaya family. Now it looked like that moment was near. Seated on a stool at the head of the table, Lonya opened a bottle of vodka. Leona struck a match to light the candles. There was no doubt in my mind. This was my moment. With my heart beginning to race, I took a deep breath. These candles were previously lit by a flame passed down from flames that were blessed by spiritual leaders on 5 continents, I explained. After a pause to allow time for Leona to translate, I continued. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and Native American elders, among others, have blessed this flame. A confused look passed over Leona's face. My words were met with silence. Suppressing my own confusion, I blew past those puzzling reactions and soldiered on. The original 5 flames were flown to Wales by military jets and joined as one. That world peace flame still burns in Wales and continues to spread like the cosmos from person to person, candle by candle. I was about to describe how I had received the flame at an interfaith church in Seattle when baby Alina caught my attention with a deep gurgle. I looked at the shiny-eyed baby bouncing on Sergei's knee. Drooling, she stared at me with a quirky, knowing grin. Suddenly, my eyes opened wider. I realized there was not a glint of understanding in the room, only blank stares and polite smiles. I concluded Lena must have told the family, I have no idea what Gail's saying. It's something about the candles. Years later, my wiser self wishes she had been there to whisper in my ear, honey, this is a slice of world peace. You're living it, baby. Shut up or you'll miss it. But no, gripped by an urge to tell them that sitting before us might actually be the first world peace flame to burn in the Republic of Belarus, I took a breath. Then suddenly, thinking my incomprehensible tale was finished, Lonia began pouring shots of vodka and proposed a toast. A voice in my head protested silently, no, wait, I'm not finished. Sensing my disappointment, my husband slipped an arm over my shoulder and squeezed in tactile Morse code. It's okay, Gaily. I get you. Let it go now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Thanks so much, Gail and David and Lyzette. Next, I would like to introduce to you all Mary Kennedy Eastham, who is the judge for the flash fiction category.
Quiet.
Mary?
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. It's Mary. It has been so much fun to be in this contest. I think I'm one of the long-standing ones who've been here for very, very long and love it still. I love my category of flash. I'm also a flash writer. Let's see, what else do I want to say? We are sneaky bandits who study all options until we plot the best way to get in and out quickly, always with the goods in hand. This year, I received a great crop of stories, making it that much harder to choose winners. So everybody reading today from my category, your stories were very, very good. If I could leave you with one little thought, it's this: read flash regularly. There really is a rhythm to how it's done well, almost like the lyrics to a song. Wigleaf produces a best of every year. I suggest looking at that, reading the stories, and your stories will get better. Okay, so here are my wonderful honorable mention winners. Shane Harrison for Graffiti Angel in the Portal. Melissa Chin for Happy Hour. Patty Campbell for the groundbreaking career of Sally Bell Price. Lois Cantrell for Teamwork. Robin Michelle, who I think has won a lot of years here, for Boat Safety. And Maria Peck for The Singer. So congratulations to all of you. And I believe all three of my top three winners are here. So I would like to introduce my third prize winner, Andrea Hansell, reading Into the Lake.
This is the second half of the story. On Fran's 63rd birthday, she is visiting her mother in a dementia unit, and Fran's mother has guessed that Fran is turning 34 and has no recollection of Fran's grown children at all. Fran's mother withdrew her arm from her blanket cocoon and moved her hand through the air as though it was a fighter plane chasing words. Birthday, she said. I ate. What, Mom? The cheesecake. The story of the cheesecake was one her mother used to tell every year on Fran's birthday. How Fran's father had invited the medical residents over for brunch and someone had brought a strawberry cheesecake. How Fran's mother had sat later on the roof of the apartment building in the warm May sun and ate one bite of the leftover cheesecake after another until she'd eaten the whole thing. How she'd promptly gone into labor and had to confess to the anesthesiologist that the last thing she ate was an entire cheesecake. Fran's mother had mostly forgotten her favorite stories, both the countless times she had told them and the fact that they had occurred at all. But today she had retrieved the cheesecake. Fran kissed her mother's dry cheek. It's a beautiful day and it's my birthday, she said. Let's get you dressed and go for a drive. Her mother sang in the car. She was better at song lyrics than conversation these days. Fran thought the songs must live in a different part of her mother's brain. Oh, what a beautiful morning, she sang. Oh, what a beautiful day. And it was a beautiful day. Fran felt like she was 6 years old, wearing patent leather party shoes and a smock dress with puffy sleeves, watching her mother serve the merry-go-round cake with the pink horses leaping through white frosting. A small black cloud blew across the sky from nowhere and covered the sun. Fran thought, today she remembers the cheesecake. What will she remember tomorrow, next month, next year? The corn is as high as an elephant's eye, her mother sang. The sun emerged from the cloud. Blinded by the sudden dazzling light, Fran covered her eyes with her hand. She felt soft grass under the tires as the car swerved. When she lowered her hand, she saw a hazy scrim, then a blue twinkle. For a split second, she felt the car float in the air like the merry-go-round horses before it plunged into the fake lake. Chlorinated water, bathtub warm from the sun, flowed immediately through the open windows and rose around them. Her mother, belted in the seat next to her, looked like a mermaid, her long hair floating up in the swirling water, her mouth open in surprise, not frightened surprise, but the wonder of a young child. Fran unbuckled her own seatbelt, pushed against the driver's side door, and felt it give. She knew she could get out and swim, pictured herself breaking the surface, calling an Uber, going home alone to her husband and the leftover cinnamon rolls. She would set her mother free to join the frolicking mer people.
I love that story. Thank you so much. Okay, now I'd like to introduce my second prize winner, Patricia Schultheis, reading This Thing with Sticks.
This thing with sticks. Evening has come and the man scans the horizon for rain clouds. It's been a long day. 10 rows planted, each 140 cubits long. His sons, older now, had helped, making the task go faster, but not easier. His eyes shift from the cloudless sky to his boys chasing each other with sticks. Beside him, his wife sighs. Why did they do that? Do what? That crazy thing with sticks. I don't know. The weight of his ignorance tugs down the corners of her mouth. She's thinking he should know, just as he should have known what ailed the ox and why the barley harvest had been so poor. All these blaming thoughts he knows buffer her mind against what she can't admit, that as much as he is, she's to blame for their current hard circumstances. This thing with sticks, he realizes, began when he first taught Cain to hoe. He draws her weary body close. They'll be fine, and inhales, hoping for the scent of rain. Please, God, spare us a shower. The next 5 evenings are the same. At sundown, he scans the sky for rain clouds, but sees only the mocking moon. While in the far field, his sons chase each other. Their game with sticks intensifies until, on the 6th evening, Abel strikes Cain's ear. The older boy howls and clamps his hand to his ear, then snatches up his stick. By the time the man reaches him, he's pummeling his brother's back. The man holds his sons apart. He doesn't know who's more deeply wounded or who's to blame. That night, just before his lids drop, he sees the tent flap lift, then lower, then lift again. The air is stirring. He stumbles past his sleeping, bloodied boys, lifts the flap, and draws a deep breath. Yes, rain is in the air. He goes into the gusting night. Like a rooted promise, a lone fig tree stands at the edge of a field. The man sinks down and rests his back against its trunk. He turns his head up and watches its branches sway until he feels the first drops falling like liquid grace. Then he returns to his tent where he lights a lamp and looks at his battered boys. Suddenly he realizes why they are so alien to him. He had been begotten a grown man, never having rolled before he crawled, nor crawled before he toddled, nor toddled before he walked. He knows nothing of the ages his sons must pass through. Or if this thing with sticks is simply what they must do in order to grow, or if the day will ever come when they'll drop their sticks and take up the plow. Dear God, oh dear God, how will they ever live to manhood if they bloody each other so?
Great reading, both of you. And now, drum roll, please. I'd like to introduce my first prize winner, Katharyn Howd Machan, hope I pronounced it right, reading Rap Song.
Thank you so much. I offer a contemporary extension of the old fairy tale Rapunzel. Rap Song. When my hair was cut off, and I mean off, I learned I could move my head in more ways than I thought were possible. The pregnancy didn't show much yet, so I could go into bars and have women buy me tonics with limes or 7-Ups with cherries. I started getting gigs in bars. People liked my voice. The pay was okay, and the tips were good. I started stuffing money into a sock I kept under my bed in the room I was able to rent. As my hair turned from stubble to fuzz to little curls I never had before, my belly began to bulge. Some of the bars didn't want me anymore, but the Golden Spinach pub took me on regular. Fortunately, I was queasy only in the mornings. Smell was the worst. Rosy perfumes and musky colognes. I just stayed up on the high stage as far away as I could. My hair kept growing in. It used to be blonde, but now it was reddish, almost like the clipper blades had stained it a bit, with the blood drawn from cuts on my scalp. At the Salvation Army, I found a wild glass emerald studded shift that looked great under the stage lights. Tips kept pouring in. I handmade some business cards to get hired for parties. I knew I was going to need more bucks. Baby makes 2. Long gone the princely man who fingered my trailing locks, and long gone the pseudo mother who attacked me for it. My first party spot was for a baby shower. The woman who hired me wanted me to look as pregnant as possible. But imagine, just as I finished my 3rd song, the mom-to-be gave out a little shriek. My waters broke. I got paid anyway for a full show. My second party was for a hair salon. The owners asked me to wear wig after wig for fun and advertisement. At the end, after paying me, they let me keep one. I chose the most outrageous, tangles of black and purple, like a witch. Third was maybe the most surprising, a gay bachelor party. The groom's best man, named Still, a regular at the Spinach, who was becoming a good buddy of mine, asked me to look like a drag queen, but with my glorious roundness exposed above a belly dance skirt he provided from his wardrobe. And afterwards, he asked me to linger. I sat down on his posh couch, wondering. thanks so much, he said. I knew your singing would be perfect. And then he started to cry. And it didn't seem strange to me at all. His hand reached over, and I knew just what he was going to do. My naked belly, I swear, almost rose to his touch. I want a baby so much, he said, not daring to look at my face. I couldn't speak. I started humming an old song about a spinning wheel I'd never sung aloud. I just found out, I said. They're going to be twins. That's when the sock of money under my bed found a new home in a glittering fairy tale.
That was wonderful. All of my winners, thank you so much. Your stories were wonderful, and please continue to send me stories next year. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Beautiful readings, Flash writers. Thank you. And thank you to Mary as well. Now I'd like to introduce to you all Tilia Klebenov Jacobs, who is the judge for our religious essay category. Welcome, Tilia.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm Tilia Klebenov Jacobs, and as you know, I'm the judge of the religious essay competition, and I'm really thrilled to be here and also to see everyone. About a year into the pandemic, my husband and I gave our teenage son a t-shirt that read, "I miss precedented times." And don't we all? It's no secret that our era is divided along almost every conceivable line: race, class, politics, gender, itself an ever-expanding term, and of course, religion. This is ironic because the word religion derives from the Latin word ligare, meaning to bind or connect, and of course the prefix re, meaning again. Religion then connects us with higher ideals in all their kaleidoscopic variety, to be sure, but even more so with each other. The basic function of religion is to bind us together as communities, as families, as groups of individuals. This function becomes fantastically evident when one is privileged, as I am, to view our common humanity through an annual gust of essays on the subject of religion. This year's winners put our fractious times front and center. If such moments, experienced and shared through the lens of religion, can sustain us through our present rancor and division, then maybe they can also help guide us back to precedented times, or, if we're lucky, to a better future. It's therefore my pleasure to introduce this year's honorable mentions and winners. The honorable mentions are, and I hope I'm saying this correctly. If I'm not, I apologize to everyone whose name I may mangle. Marjorie Bluestein for Road Trip Creastone. Karen Marker for A Season of Joy, Following the Moon at Muir Beach. Karen Houseworth for Circuits and the Sacred, A Beginner's Translation. And Shelley Gill Murray for Real ID. As for the winners, in third place is Evie Groch for When Does a House Become a Home? Is Evie here to read to us? Oh, yes, I see you. Hi, Evie.
Yeah, and it's actually Evie Groch, but that's fine. No problem. Okay. When does a house become a home? After the moving van has deposited your furniture and boxes in your new house or a house new to you, and you've unpacked and put away all your belongings, even had your first meal prepared on the new kitchen appliances, can you consider your house a home? In Judaism, there actually is a ritual that sanctifies your permanent residence and changes its status to a home, created and lived in by people who share a common belief and act accordingly. This ritual serves as a symbol to everyone else that this particular dwelling adheres to and operates by a special set of rules, values, and beliefs. The ritual involves the mezuzah, a small, slender case, usually adorned, that contains a parchment on which certain verses of the Torah are inscribed. These selected verses remind the residents of the home as they enter or leave that they have a covenant with God. The mezuzah is of biblical origin, actually means doorpost, and instructs followers, quote, "And you shall inscribe them on the doorposts, mezuzot, of your house and on your gates." The ritual doesn't end there. The mezuzah is affixed to the doorpost of every living space in the home, not just the entry door. Bathrooms, closets, etc. are exempt. It is affixed to the right side of the door as you enter a room. It is placed at the lower part of the top third of the doorpost at a slant, with its lowest part toward you as you face the right doorpost. It must be secured at its top and bottom. There is a brief ritual for the act of attaching it. When, with the mezuzah in one hand, you say the following: "Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to affix a mezuzah." All present say amen, and the mezuzah is put in place. This 20-second ritual sanctifies the home for the lifetime of the dweller's tenure there. When many door-to-door salespeople and religious proselytizers would canvass our neighborhood, they would invariably mistake our mezuzah for a doorbell and notify us that it wasn't working. We always smiled and said, "Thank you." I've never lived in a dwelling without a mezuzah. It wouldn't be our home without it. We may not be a deeply religious family, but certain rituals will always stay with us, our children, and our grandchildren. The alternate side of the parchment has only one word on it, Shaddai, one of the names for God. The Hebrew initials of Shaddai mirror the initials of the phrase, Shomer Daltot Yisrael, the guardian of the doors of Israel. To some, this lettering invites superstition, and they accord the mezuzah the status of an amulet, which it is not. Although the mezuzah isn't intended to serve as a protective device, only a reminder of the covenant and our love and adherence to create a sanctified household, I myself, deep inside, feel more fulfilled and protected when it welcomes people through our doorpost. Thank you.
In second place is Gail McCormick for Finding Mary.
Thank you. A low blanket of white clouds hovers over Puget Sound. Cool air soothes my unquiet mind as I set out to walk. COVID-19 is sweeping the country, and the streets of Seattle are dominated by police violence and Black Lives Matter protesters. In my part of town, there are no gunshots or shattered glass, no refrigerated trucks storing corpses of COVID victims. Still, my body registers what is concealed. I feel as if I'm sinking in a river contaminated by violence, greed, hate, pain, and need. A foghorn sounds in the distance, a long, dull blast that quivers in my chest. I place both hands over my heart for comfort. I feel my heart beat. Then, to my astonishment, I hear a voice. Here, I am here. This woman's voice has no sound. It's like a song playing in my head. I'm certain the lyrics, spoken, not sung, have sprung from inside me beneath my grasping hands. Stunned, my whole being turns toward the voice like a flower reaching for the sun. Though I've never heard the voice before, I know to whom it belongs. Mary? I ask incredulously. Earlier in the week, with my faith in a divine presence faltering, I had prayed to Mary. This was not the first time I had prayed to her, but it was the first time I'd simply asked, Mother Mary, Where are you? I certainly hadn't expected a direct response, a location so specific and nestled in my heart. Yet now it seems so obvious and natural that I laugh out loud. Of course, you're in my heart. The burning questions I have for Mary must wait. If I try to engage in a conversation with her now, I'm sure I'll conjure up a fantasy and doubt the connection we just had. Mary's surprise disclosure is more than enough. I trust her voice is part of a mystery unfolding. On this journey, I will begin to understand I am one of millions responding to a universal call for each of us to reflect the healing presence of the divine feminine the world is crying for. The sky brightens as I circle toward home. Sea lions bark in the distance. A man in white overalls climbs a ladder to anoint a house with a fresh coat of paint. A gardener rests on her knees as if praying to the earth. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. And first place goes to Karen Marker for Ruth in the Redwoods.
Thank you. Okay. Ruth in the Redwoods, September 18th, 2021. A year ago, when the light of the moon was blocked by the earth and the distances had grown their greatest between low and high tides, I went to Muir Woods National Monument. Because of the wildfires, we had just spent weeks in air that we were told to keep from our lungs after months of having to keep distant in all our contacts with other humans, especially in enclosed spaces. Now, here we were, about to begin our celebration of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. On this day, there was an exhibit of posters along the trail celebrating the centennial of women's suffrage and the great women in this movement. I had stopped in front of one that said "Fight" over the picture of Ida B. Wells Barnett, an African-American reporter, investigator, instigator, suffragist. It was there, as I was reflecting on how remarkable it was to find Barnett's picture among the Redwoods, that I learned of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death. Everything in me was screaming, no, this could not be. After all we had been fighting the past 4 years of unthinkable undoing of our democracy and the life of our planet. After we had been unable to turn away from what had been captured, the violence against Black lives, the inhuman treatment of children at the borders. I could not bear what could happen next. Our justice system destroyed, more selling off of our protected spaces and our freedoms, women's rights over their bodies, civil rights, workers' rights, transgender rights trampled down, everything on the verge of collapse, burning from within. Then I looked up, all the way up the 258 feet of thick and twisted bark, threaded with purples, lavenders, and greens amidst russets. In that moment, as the light shone through the highest branches in great long beams, it felt that RBG was right there with us, standing amidst the pictures of all those other women who had come before, who had said resist on this same path as the Redwoods of upward lifting. I knew the sun would soon be setting, and I would be zooming the Jewish holiday services, which would be speaking of the scales of justice. We would be singing Avinu Malkeinu, and I would imagine standing in court, imagine how RBG stood for everything this holiday represented. The ram's horn would be blowing in a call to action again and again and again. Justice we shall pursue as you taught us. There was so much to learn from these redwoods, while almost all of them bear the mark of fire, as miraculous as what Moses saw in the desert. They had burned but were not consumed. And even with their shallow rootedness, they do not fall but hold each other up, branches twisted among branches. Saying Ruth's name for Kaddish would be raw and real. There would be so many other names too, those I had lost this year, who I would have to look up towards the stars to see. They would remind me that the battle was never over and never lost. Hope is invented every day, wrote James Baldwin. There is not just one fight for justice. For RBG, for all those I loved, I would have to keep fighting, even if the headlines were worse tomorrow.
Thank you so much for that. All of those beautiful readings. And all I can say as a follow-up is that every November I look forward to getting my magical package from Eileen, because I just never know what's going to be in it. And I'm never disappointed. Thank you all for entering. Do it again. Tell your friends.
Thank you so much, Tilia, and thank you to those amazing writers in the religious essay category. Those were fantastic pieces. I'd now like to introduce to you all Gail Wilson Kenna, who is the judge for creative nonfiction. Gail.
Okay. Thank you, and that was very moving. Thank you to Karen. For creative nonfiction this year, I found it difficult, given the large number of excellent submissions, to choose only 8 for recognition. And the writers are 4 women and 4 men, and only 1 from California. The honorable mentions are Nancy Phillip of Arizona for What Remains, John Allen of Missouri, Behind the Veil, Anthony Pizzo of Florida, Justified Decisions, and Julie Pinzano of Sausalito, California, Signs of Life, and Sarah Etkin Baker of Texas for Beacons of Hope. And congratulations to all of them for their fine writing. The second place winner in creative nonfiction is not reading today. His name is Porter Huddleston of Colorado. But I would like to read the first paragraph of Porter's second place Prattsville, because I found the opening remarkable, as was his narrative. There's a low-slung patch of dark earth between Missouri and Texas where there are diamonds, fields of them. Pressure and time takes the hot and dirty husk of the world and turns it into gems. I don't know how the grand stuff loses its identity completely in the process and becomes something different entirely. What's left in the end is hard and strange looking. But when everything is over and it's finally immune to pressure and all the meanness of the world, how it reflects the light is something beautiful indeed. And thanks to Porter for his evocative piece, Prattsville. The first and third place winners had what I like to call these mysterious conjunctions. Both writers moved soul making to food. Both writers are also poets. And I only realized after Eileen Malone sent names of all the winners that both Erica and Frances were writers who had won in creative nonfiction before. And more than that, something else is mysterious. Erica Goss of Eugene, Oregon, gave her winning piece the title Talismans with an S. I saw this title and realized that Frances Flavin of Sparks, Nevada, the third place winner in creative nonfiction, also won mention in the short story category for a story called Talisman, a lovely coincidence. And Erica's name I knew from her memorable submission Turbulence in 2018, which I've never forgotten, about her son's schizophrenia. And she won second place that year. And last year, Frances won honorable mention in creative nonfiction for a piece I won't forget, a narrative titled On the Firing Range. So yes, the creative world whirls with connections. And it is our luck today, and I hope Frances is here too, that both Frances and Erica will read from their winning submissions in creative nonfiction. So Frances is the first, and it's about a slum in Manila.
Thank you, Gail. You're a role model for all of us writers, and greetings, everyone. Manila is an assault on the senses. The streets squirm in squalor in the pre-dawn light. The pearl of the Pacific lies elsewhere, near the embassies and governmental centers. Here in the suburban barangays is the living landfill of third world reality. Here and there, the pungent smell of sewer gas wafts from broken trenches. Hovels stretch for mile upon mile of decay and trash. Patchwork sheds and shanties of discarded scraps of wood and metal speak to the ingenuity and poverty of the masses. In gaping entryways, half-naked men stretch languidly in the low light. They are a feral presence in the drab desolation of the false dawn. Here and there, undaunted by their surroundings, elderly women attack the clutter with stick brooms and resolve. As full dawn arrives, the streets are occupied from curb to curb. Motorcyclists and scooters frequently invade the sidewalks. It is a scene of controlled bedlam. Cars, trucks, buses, jeepneys, trikes, motor scooters, bicycles, and the occasional horse-drawn cart compete for every inch of pavement. Risking life and limb, vendors walk within the bedlam of ever-shifting vehicles, selling water, nuts, chips, and dried fruit to the gridlocked drivers and passengers. The squalor of pervasive poverty is only a setting for a more nuanced existence. As the day brightens, the mabuhay spirit of the Filipino holds sway. It courses through the growing throng in the streets and squares. This is a community held together by optimism, goodwill, and hard work. Flower vendors release the fragrance of 1,000 bouquets into the morning air. In this miasma of the foul air and sweet food, food is the foundation of a sense of place. For the very poor, there are always skewers of barbecued chicken intestines and pork belly. Along the sidewalks, restaurants and small eateries compete with sidewalk table stalls and barbecues to satisfy the early morning hunger of the masses. The aromas of adobo, lechon kawali, sisig, crispy pata, chicken inasal, and pancit blend with the fragrance of flowers and the shifting scent of sewage. Everywhere there is rice, the staple of the Pinoy, and the bedrock of all cuisine. There are no breakfast, lunch, or dinner foods, just food. Here in the teeming streets and alleyways, everyone knows what time it is. It's time to eat.
Thanks. I really appreciate that one, Frances. And I would only like to add one thing. When I read that, I had no idea the gender of the person narrating it. And it was my delight when I saw that it was Frances. And Erica is very special.
Okay, I'll start. When I was growing up, my mother stashed little bits of food around our house, dried cheese rinds, heels of bread, and browning apple cores with a bite or two left. I'd find these tiny stockpiles hidden in the kitchen under a stack of napkins or in the glove compartment of our car next to a rinsed out pickle jar filled with water. Sometimes I found a single square of chocolate nibbled around the edges or a half-eaten piece of Brock's taffy tucked behind the flour sack. My mother rarely hid fresh, new edibles. The food I found was almost always ready for the trash, scraps that anyone else would have thrown away. I didn't question this behavior as a child. It was just a thing my mother did. A little weird, maybe, but harmless. For all I knew, everyone's mother hid little snacks for later. Wasting food was forbidden in our house, and I internalized the message that nothing remotely edible, no matter how unappealing, should ever be discarded. More than once, my mother rescued and reserved food that I tried to sneak into the garbage. I wrote about that in a poem titled Scraps, which begins with the following lines. When I was 7, food I threw away reappeared on my plate each day until I ate it, blubbering, licking tears from the corners of my mouth. By the time I was a teenager, I'd been to enough friends' homes to learn that my mother's little food collections were, to say the least, unusual. At other people's houses, I didn't see a greasy paper bag with a lone French fry stuck to the bottom next to the toaster, or a half cup of cold tea with a sliver of stale bread hardening in the saucer. I knew, albeit vaguely, that there was more to my mother's behavior than staving off hunger. After all, we never lacked for food when I was growing up. Something deeper was going on, something I didn't comprehend for many years. In 1946, my mother was a 9-year-old child living in post-war Germany. The winter of 1946, nicknamed the Hunger Winter, delivered a cascade of misfortunes, a bad harvest, record low temperatures, and a coal shortage. In many large German cities, including Cologne, where my mother lived, daily caloric intake dropped to below 1,000 calories per person per day. Many people died, and the survivors lived in a state of semi-starvation for years. The humiliated, defeated German public could expect little sympathy from its conquerors. In 1945, General Lucius Clay echoed the world's opinion. I feel that the Germans should suffer from hunger and from cold, as I believe such suffering is necessary to make them realize the consequences of a war they caused. That same year, journalist Isaac Deutscher, writing for The Economist, made this observation about the Germans he saw on the street. What is noticeable is not the leanness, nor even the general tiredness, but the complexion. The faces of the babies in the strollers are deathly white. Small children are yellow. During my childhood, my mother said little about those terrible years. Once, however, she shared a story from the Hunger Winter. As her grandmother divided up the family's food portions for the day, she wept, saying that she would trade all of her jewelry for just one slice of bread. My mother never forgot her grandmother's hands, adorned with sparkling rings, tucking her in on freezing winter nights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erica. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you very much to Gail and to those amazing essayists. We'll now move to the category of short story, and I would like to introduce to you all Mary Mackey, the judge of short story. Mary.
Hello, everybody. It's good to see you, and I've had a wonderful time with these. I always do. It's my Christmas present really every year, is to get this package of stories. Please keep entering. Please keep sending them to me. It makes the dark winter much lighter for me. There was, they're just so good every year. And, as usual, I've asked on my page, that you love English and that you make a mastery of prose and that you polish and that you have characters and you have something happen and good, and you all do it. I mean, it's just a wonderful array of very fine writing. I want to first read the names of my honorable mentions, and then I'm going to ask my winners to read. And I'm just sorry, everybody can't read. I mean, I wish we had days and days and days just to hang out and read all of these, because I know you would love them. So here are the honorable mentions. Paul Lamar for Miss Pearlthorpe, Kim A. Biglow for En Passant, Francis Flavin for The Talisman, which I think, is interesting. Once again, this coherence and harmony of creative stories have come together. I'm going to read the names of my prize winners, and then I'm going to ask them to read, starting with the third prize. Third prize, Heather Borbo for The Perfumer. Second prize, Patricia Schultheis for In the Ullage. And first prize, Dorothea Polk for The American Dress. And her daughter, Ellen Henderson, is going to read for her because Dorothea had to leave early. So please, Heather, I know you're here. Would you please read your from your winning story, your third prize story, The Perfumer?
Thank you, everyone. And this is just a short extract, but I'm really grateful to be able to read it. The Perfumer. She would often hold the men and women who had poured their affection for her. She would hold them in precisely a way that expressed neither maternal nor romantic intentions. That was caring, not clinical, but that imparted rejection without leaving the receiver of this embrace feeling rejected or reprimanded. To comfort herself, Doña Tomasina found refuge underwater. As long as she could remember her dreams, she had welcomed languid scenes of swimming in the middle seas, just deep enough to find larger fish, but still be able to see the surface light. Here she could exhale through her nose, bubbles trailing her explorations. She never remembered needing to inhale or being worried about drowning. Here, she could not smell. Here, her other senses took over and thrived. Here, she was happiest. And so it seemed natural that when she was 28, she should be moved by the scent of the fisherman's son, a heady mix of sea and death, soap and youth that kept most young women away. In spite of her reluctance to be vulnerable and her need to stay inward for just a while longer, her body followed her nose until she stood before him, silent and warm. Sensing her breath on his back, he turned to see her eyes, half open, smiling, hungry. He felt his breath leave him. He wanted to hold this moment before the words took over. Slowly, feeling his pulse return, he held out his hand and hoped she would do the same. She inhaled deeply before she took his hand in hers. "You smell like hope before pain," she said, looking directly into his eyes, though her voice nearly whispered. She had named it, his life, his fate, his love. And for this, he was grateful and awed. Finally, he introduced himself, Suhail Inish. She took his hand. She felt the calluses and the soft heart of his palm, and she breathed into her belly, wanting to savor his scent in her bones. Suhail, Suhail, she repeated steadily, seeking clarity to the confusion within her. Suhail, I am not ready. He laughed, sighed under his breath, and ached as he said, I understand. And he did. She was not ready for all he would offer and all she would want to give. Thank you.
That was beautiful.
Thank you so much. That's beautiful writing, really beautiful. My second prize winner is Patricia Schultheis for In the Ullage. And I think I saw Patricia here somewhere. Patricia, are you here?
Yes,
Ready to
yes,
read?
I
Oh,
am.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Please read.
Okay, thank you. This story is what I hope will be the first in a collection that I hope to write about a family in Baltimore, and it begins. It's the story of Teddy Holbrook, a recovered alcoholic and someone who wanted to be a writer. And on a frigid Friday night, Teddy hears his doorbell ring, and on his porch is a boy from the prep school where Teddy teaches. And Teddy knows the boy. His name is Willie Tate. And Willie says, I think I killed my mother. And so Teddy follows Willie back to Willie's house, where he discovers that Willie's mother, Betsy Tate, is in fact alive, but she has a very serious gash on her forehead, and she is also very, very drunk. So the police come, and then the paramedics come, and they persuade Betsy to go to the hospital, and Teddy's then left alone with Teddy. As though he could conjure a ghost mother from the dark, the boy stared out the window long after the gurney carrying his mother was gone. She's not like this all the time, you know, Mr. Holbrook. I know. I told her I'd help her take down the Christmas village. It's past Valentine's Day, and we still have Christmas crap up. It's embarrassing. The boy picked up a wine bottle. It's all Mr. Chase's fault. He gives us these vocabulary words. Today's word was eulogy. I have to confess, I never heard of eulogy. Eulogy. The boy held the bottle like it was presenting a scepter. See this empty space? That's the eulogy. I'm sort of a word nerd. Vintners leave space in bottles so the pressure doesn't make the wine burst out when it's open. I got pissed because my mom dropped our Christmas Village's general store. So I told her that's where she lives, in the eulogy, above the booze. He threw the bottle into the cluttered sink. Willie, oh, Willie. Teddy hugged him and they went into the living room where Teddy sank into the couch. He noticed ceramic pieces scattered around the brass andirons and watched Willie attempt to fit a few shards together. The cat wandered in and the boy set aside the broken pieces, picked up the cat, and sat beside Teddy. It's just that the general store was my favorite. I started thinking it was weird to assume that all the people in the village just stopped living because we packed them away every year. I mean, that would mean that the carolers would be singing and the kids skating forever. And that would make the whole village a sort of a Christmas hell. So I made up stories about what the people did when they were packed away. And that's what got me so pissed when my mom broke the store. Mr. Potter, he owned the store and he was the one who knew all the stories. Now who's going to tell them? Well, stories don't die, Willie. I didn't tell you everything. See, there's this boy, Walter. His mother's dead, and his father is building a railroad in Florida, so Walter goes to boarding school. But at Christmas, he stays with his grandmother in the village. And every year, Mr. Potter updates Walter on what's happened. So you're telling me that Walter comes back from boarding school every year? He never grows up? Well, there are some things I haven't worked out yet. That's okay, Willie. You have time. I'm very tired. Teddy threw an arm over the boy's shoulder and he settled in, his breathing growing more rhythmic, his head drooping. Teddy knew he should call the boy's father, but he stayed on the couch and looked at the bookcases surrounding the fireplace. He could almost feel the words beating like sealed dreams against the covers. He longed to take a book down, open it, and escape, but stayed on the couch with Willie while the soulful night gathered round them.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That was absolutely beautiful. And now I'd like to ask our first prize winner to read. The first prize winner is Dorothea Falk, but for the American Dress, she had to leave early. So I understand her daughter, Ellen Henderson, is going to read for her, which is wonderful. Ellen, could you please read?
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to do this for my mom.
Oh, my pleasure.
And thank you for the invitation to read the excerpt from my story, The American Dress. The theme is life versus death, when one can't step out of the box of tradition and enter the unknown. The setting is the fall of Saigon during the Vietnam traditional Tet celebration, and the Vietnamese heroine, Tu, is at the Saigon airport with her son, Kim, unaware that their pet monkey, Charlie, had broken from his chain and followed. The American looked up with a quick grin and nodded. The whole damned Orient should know about the hot dog. Made a special trip over, sweetened all the right pots. Pull strings, girly, pull strings. I'll buy you one, buy you both one when we get to New York. Tu wasn't listening. If she bought only one ticket, Kim's, there would be 2,000 American dollars, enough to buy much rice for her family and all the luxuries for Tet. She opened her purse to look at the crisp green dollars. more valuable here than the plaster which changed daily. Piaster which changed daily. Wistfully, she looked at Kim, reached to touch his hair tightly. After a little while, after Tet maybe, Roger could send more money, so easy to get at games. She would buy her ticket then. She turned back to the American. Would you watch him for me on the plane to New York? Would you see him safe with his father? She began to fumble in her purse for a picture of Roger Camden. Urgently, she made her way toward their favorite market. Her mother would be there still, waiting, she knew, for the prices to drop. With swift delight, she saw that several tables, burdened with bright flowers and masks, had been shoved onto the sidewalk. But two hadn't thought to see Charlie zigzagging his way in the same direction. You bad fellow, she scolded. When you're chained a day or so, you'll remember to behave yourself. Two's thighs pressed against the American skirt as she despised its restraint. There was more freedom in the traditional Audai. She must catch Charlie, she thought, before he landed in the middle of the bright heap. What a bad name you make for yourself, she screeched, lunging for him. Her small foot lifted to claim the walk when the cyclist's roar filled her senses. Two squeezed her lids tight, and Roger Camden's face carpeted her mind. She felt herself lifted, no pain, but then with a brutal thud, the pavement rushed to meet her. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Please keep entering. Please keep these wonderful, brilliant, amazing, surprising stories coming. You are one of the great pleasures of my life, and I'd love to have more from you, all of you. Please keep entering. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Mary and to those amazing short story writers. I'd now like to introduce to you all Linda Joy Myers, who is the judge of our memoir vignette category. Linda Joy.
Hi, nice to see you all here today. You know, what can I say about memoir? I can say that it's become a huge part of my life. I started the National Association of Memoir Writers because I wanted to support the power of true stories in people's lives. I know that writing a memoir for me saved my life, but so did all literature that I had ever read. And of course, every year I get the little package, the big package actually from Eileen, and begin to sort through it. And it always feels kind of sad to reject anybody because everybody poured their heart out as they do in all of these writings. So then I go and I use, you know, the idea of soul making as a way to sort through, did I get that catch in my throat or the catch in my chest when I read that piece, as well as, of course, looking at things like scenes and showing more than telling, and, you know, the craft of writing. So I'm really pleased today to be able to be here with all of you and to share first the honorable mentions. It was pretty hard to choose who was first, second, third, and honorable mention, and I had to reread everything several times. So I just want to say that to everybody. So the honorable mentions are Martin Blender for Charles Bronson, Hollywood Immortal. Ted Doolittle for The Stars. Gail McCormick, hi Gail, again, for The Heart of Minsk. Julie Pisano for Lost, leading a Hemingway tour. And Sarah Etgen Baker for Poor Little Matchstick Girl. Today, my readers are here. I'm so happy for that. So Maxine Rose Schur is both third place winner for The Boat Woman of Way and first place for The Little Beggars. And you all know these are blind, you know, we don't know who's sending things in. So that was interesting that I chose both of those. And second prize for Maria Hanley for Holy, and I'm so glad she's here today. So let's start with Maxine Rose Shore for the third prize, the Boat Woman of Hue.
Thank you so much. So here's another Vietnam story from my trip to Vietnam a few years ago. When I got to the dock, I found a dragon boat waiting for me. "Hello, lady." A thin, aged woman, toothless as a toddler, working on the boat, called to me. She reached out to hold my arm and help me jump aboard. I was the only passenger. Like the woman herself, the boat was weathered, but I had confidence in its safety because the pilot, a silent, middle-aged man, looked steady. With a long wooden pole, the woman pushed the boat away from the shore, and off I sailed down the Perfume River. As soon as our journey was underway, the boatwoman unrolled a bamboo mat on the damp floorboards, and then she went back into the small, dim room on the boat and emerged with a styrofoam cooler of soft drinks for sale. I bought a Coke, and the selling continued. Back and forth she went to present to me a different array of wares: silk pajamas, embroidered cloth bags, pearl earrings, and chopsticks. And each time she brought out something new, I shook my head regretfully. But after a while, seeing her look so disheartened, I relented and bought the chopsticks. And in gratitude, she gave me a bottle of water. Like all Vietnamese, she was curious about a woman traveling alone, and she began to ask questions. I told her I was from America, and she told me her name. Her name was Hung, which I later learned means pink rose. And with a hint of pride, she told me how old she was, 65. She asked me my age, and I told her we were the same age. The speed at which her smile vanished on realizing this told me that she too had felt a cruel disparity. For the rest of the ride, she no longer smiled. When we spoke again, I learned she had been married when she was 17 and that she bore 7 children. She had never left Hue, ever. And as she spoke, I did the grim math. She and I were 19 in January of 1968. While I was preparing for a fun-filled summer in Israel, she was a young mother in hell. In that month, during the Tet Offensive, the Viet Cong captured Hue. They tortured, executed, and threw into mass graves 3,000 men, women, and children. After 3 weeks, the city lay in ruins and corpses lay everywhere. This was the infamous massacre at Hue. "Come," the woman beckoned, and I followed her into the shadowy room. She walked over to a large framed black and white photograph on the wall. She pointed to it and then to herself. "Me," she said, "marry." I looked up at the photo to see the face of a pretty teenage girl, an innocent bride. "And your children?" I asked. "No more," she said quietly. "No more here, no more now." She pointed to her son, whose back was facing us as he piloted the boat. "One boy, no more now." We docked in Hue, and as the boat sailed away, the figure of the woman shrunk smaller, and it is that miniature waving image of her that haunts. Not because my last view of her was at such a great distance, but because my full understanding of her, what she lived through and how, was at such a great distance, forever impossible for me to justly reach. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's very powerful, very powerful.
Thank you.
Yes. So Maria Hanley will
Yes.
read Holy.
Thank you. My vignette draws on a Christmas memory from my teen years when I attended an all-girls Catholic boarding school in England called Mayfield. Each year we performed a Christmas pageant called Live Crib, and it began in the village high street and made its way all the way to the school chapel. In my final year there, I unexpectedly had to fill in for the role of Mary, during which I had to ride a real donkey, bareback, up a cobblestone street on a cold winter's night, and then proceed to keep a real baby settled in front of crowds of onlookers. And my 17-year-old self was not entirely convinced I could pull it off. My hope in writing Holy was to capture the feeling I had in the church that evening, which holds true so many years later, even as my spirituality has shifted. So I'll start from the moment we enter the chapel. When the first words of once in royal David City pierced the hushed space, my concerns about the donkey, the cold, or even the potentially fussy baby waiting at the altar dissipated. The soprano sang from an upper gallery, her voice powerful in its solitude, permeating the chapel and heart space of all who filled it. Interspersed with gospel readings, carols I'd heard my whole life were transformed with soaring soprano harmonies, mighty enough to crack open the heavens. As I cooed at the cherubic baby in my arms, that ancient space and those angelic voices touched me at the core of my Catholic roots, offering a glimpse of the divine. The ethereal light, the angels praising from on high, the song of an entire community layered upon the celestial voices of the choir, the smiling infant, even the patient donkey, converged in spiritual perfection. Our live crib was nothing short of a Christmas miracle. Like most pageants, Mayfield's live crib is the story of Christmas for those who followed Jesus Christ. But it is also a tale of Christmas spirit. It is the story of what happens when people come together in anticipation, song, cheer, love, joy, hope, awe, and maybe even faith for all that is holy in the church and beyond its walls. In this vein, Live Crib ends with a prayer from the Gospel of Luke for peace on earth, goodwill to men. That evening, as the pews emptied, people greeted each other again and again with warm embraces and broad smiles, lingering and wishing each other a happy Christmas, as they say in England. The holiness of humanity at its best, and perhaps enough to sway even the farthest fallen among us.
So beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So Maxine Rose Shore, the first prize winner for Little Beggars.
Okay, thank you. So this story was written when I took many years ago a trip along what is now called the Hippie Trail, overland from Europe to Asia with my husband. And this, the full title really is The Little Beggars of Kathmandu, and it's the condensed version. The little beggars were boys ranging in age from about 7 to 13. Their hair matted, their bodies filthy, their voices harsh. They roamed the dusty streets barefoot and in rags. I saw they were fighting for turns to swing a desiccated rat by its tail, and the object of their game was to see who could swing it around the fastest. When the boys grew tired of their game, they hurled the rat corpse like a frisbee across the street, and then they noticed us. "Madam, please, madam, money, madam, please, I am poor, you give money." As the beggars came close to us, I recoiled at their lousy hair, open sores, and rat-stained hands. I remembered the cautionary words of other travelers we had met along the way. You can't give money to all beggars, so better not give to any. When you see begging kids, they're not really poor. Their parents teach them to scam money from tourists. Give to charities, not to individuals. We rented a motorcycle, and early the next morning, we wound our way through the Panchkal Valley. Outcroppings of towering pinnacles covered by cascading creepers loomed above us like gigantic weathered tombstones. I had entered the misty landscape of a Chinese scroll painting, and it was then that I had a revelation. The Chinese vertical landscapes I had admired for so many years in San Francisco's Asian Art Museum were not, as I had believed, stylized depictions of mountains. No, the artists had painted skinny vine-covered pinnacles because they saw skinny vine-covered pinnacles. And the idea that sometimes a reality defies preconceived notions and turns out to be precisely as it appears was both exhilarating and humbling. About a week later in Kathmandu, one afternoon, I noticed some boys with short combed hair, dressed in clean shirts and trousers and wearing shoes and socks. They held large white enamel plates covered with muslin tea towels. Crêpe, monsieur? Crêpe, madame? They asked. The little bakers. In the 1 week I had been sightseeing, the boys had turned from bakers to school children. 1 week. 2 young New Caledonian men who had come to Nepal to hike changed their plans. They rented an apartment to teach the boys reading, writing, and math. They were also teaching the boys how to make crêpe so they could earn their own money. Over the years, I have often returned to San Francisco's Asian Art Museum. And when I stand before the sublime Chinese landscape scrolls, my thoughts return to Nepal and that afternoon in the mountains when I realized the truth about these paintings. They were depicted precisely as they appeared. And I remember too the little bakers of Kathmandu, and what should have been apparent to me, that the filthy bakers were children, precisely as they appeared to 2 young men. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Everybody, enter your memoir stories next year. We really look forward to reading them again and being inspired. And thank you, Eileen, and everyone for this great contest.
Thanks so much, Linda Joy. We have 2 categories remaining, and I'd now like to introduce to you all Donna Gillespie, who is the judge for the novel excerpt category. Donna.
Okay, I'm Donna Gillespie, and this is only my 2nd year, and I just really, really enjoyed it. I feel like it's a huge honor, and it's just so much fun to get caught up in other writers' worlds. And my category, the novel excerpt, is, it always strikes me that the opening pages of a novel put a unique burden on an author. You have so little space to present characters who ignite the imagination and tease you into wanting to know more about them, while establishing the environment and promising a compelling conflict to come. The author must, through foreshadowing, close selection of authenticating details, suggest to the reader that the protagonists are immersed in challenges that will test their limits. It's not easy to establish a world in a few pages. When done well, it can almost seem like a magician's trick. And I found some impressive examples in this year's list of winners. First, I'll name our honorable mentions in the novel excerpt category. James Gregory Kingston for The Girl from Potter's Field. Francis Flavin for Fireweed in Autumn. Hardy Griffin for Broken Kismet. Hardy Griffin again for Detective Kasim. Eric J. Kahn for Concord. Marcia Peck for The Unattended Moment. Tanya Boumsta for Interlude. Glenn Wood for Awake the God of Day. And now we come to our top 3. You'll hear first from 3rd prize winner, Michael Mons for The Glass Tree. And here I found an effortless immersion in time, place, and circumstance, and dialogue that propels the story forward while revealing character. Every line of dialogue seemed to open out the story a degree or 2 more. The author hints at a greater reality all about, which really impressed me, gives a sense that the protagonist is enmeshed in complexity. The last page came too soon. I wanted more. And now Michael Manns.
The glass tree is set in Paris in the year 1954. In this scene, Eli's estranged father-in-law, Jean-Paul, finds him at a cafe to ask for his help. JP had all but blamed me for Liana's death the last time we spoke. Protecting her was my only job as a husband, he'd said. And now he wanted a favor. I pushed away the old hard feelings and the urge to tell him to fuck off. A year ago, I hadn't been so restrained. It's sensitive, he said. I need family. JP's eyes held mine a moment and then looked away. Family. As far as I was concerned, the funeral had marked the end of whatever kind of family we'd been. I'm touched, Jean-Paul, but I don't break legs for a living. JP stabbed out his cigarette. Just meet me here at 3. Can you do that? Okay, fine, I said. I didn't want him to start throwing tables around. He took some francs from his pocket and tossed the coins on the table. And take the day off, he said, glancing down at my glass. I felt my blood boil and gripped the table to keep my temper. Courage, he muttered as he reached the sidewalk. I stood up, stunned by the word, and after leaving a few more francs, headed off in the opposite direction. I didn't stop until I reached the stairs to the Seine. The first time Liana had asked for courage from me was before we were married. I could picture us standing naked in the cold stream behind her cousin's farm in Burgundy. Will you love me courageously, she'd asked. I remembered the smell of the pine trees that grew sideways down to the riverbed and the deep pool under the cliff and lacing my fingers to hold her tight. Will you always love me, she asked, leaning her head back to study my eyes. Always, I answered. Avec courage, she asked, her brow furrowing. I mean, will you love me courageously? I said I would, even as I wondered what she meant. We toweled off and then lay in the sand. You've made it so I owe you my life, she said. Sometimes I wish you hadn't. Liana turned on her side and pressed herself against me. I love you for saving me, but I would have left Eli. You know that, don't you? You don't owe me, I said. She turned my face to hers. No one's ever made me feel so wanted, so quenched, so believed in. It's amazing to feel so much love, but it scares me too because that's not me. I'm not like you. That night back at the quiet farmhouse, I listened to her breathing as she slept and wondered how I'd ever need courage to love her. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael Manns. Our next winner in the novel excerpt category is Amy Mitchell, who has won second prize for her erotic novel, A Cunt's Affair, which I found to be a brilliant satire of suburbia. And just a heads up, if there are kids watching today, this one is rated R. This piece immediately creates its own comic world. The author describes a wealthy woman in a gated community caught in a choking web of normalcy. And she has her own unique way of dealing with the problem. There's something vibrant and joyous about this. The author has the gift of finding the bizarre in the everyday. Here to read her excerpt now is Amy Mitchell.
Thank you, Judge Gillespie. This is such a wonderful opportunity. I just wanted to give a brief background. This story is about Eva, a fanciful housewife whose affair empowers her to overcome the narcissistic husband who keeps diminishing her self-worth. It is inspired by true life events, and I wanted to create some awareness of how ordinary life can take a different turn, and how these can be different, and how there can be different perceptions of the ordinary housewife. She isn't exactly what you think until you look at her through a magnifying glass. It's the old adage of no one knows what happens behind closed doors. A fairy tale cannot be a fairy tale after all. So here is my work. I slide like a serpent into Art's secret message box. My face flushes with excitement. My burner phone lights. I tap out your thumbs. Psst. I woke up with a soaked pussy and a wet spot on my sheets. Guess who I was dreaming of? 8:41 a.m. It's President's Day, and I'm luxuriating in the soft satin sheets in the spare bedroom. The morning sun shimmers through the eastern window, casting a pretty glow across a lake near Disney World. It's ironic. I live next to the most magical place on earth, yet my life is the unfairy tale. Even my gated community, Hawks Point, looks like a slice of idyllic America, but it's nothing more than stately homes sitting atop a manicured swamp in the suburbs. Art, the other man, lives in here too, But he's also married with kids and he's my husband's best friend. So far, we haven't yet, so I'm not sure if we're technically cheating, but we've definitely entered the danger zone. A few minutes pass. Come on, Art, hurry. Soon the kids will wake up and I'll have to make them breakfast. Those cute little cock blocks are home for the holiday, and I should probably get up and go check on them. But first, the moistness lingering on my lips, his reply. A girl's always got to have her priorities straight. I count my breaths in anticipation. Art replies in 3. Wow, what a message to start the day off. 8:43 a.m. I'm shocked he's so surprised, especially after last night when he got me all riled up, telling me how hard he was picturing me riding his face. He said he wanted to stick his tongue inside my pussy while I squirted into his mouth. In the spare bed, I slipped a dildo between my legs, wishing Art's sexy South African ass was next to me, in lieu of my husband's empty spot. Yesterday was Valentine's Day, but Duke really screwed up. I didn't get a flower, petal, not one single pic to post on Facebook, but he did give me a card that said, Eva, you haven't made things easy, ... but hey, no regrets. Like seriously, what the F? When I blew up at him in bed last night, he literally kicked me off. More shocking than painful, but still, is this really what I signed up for? Duke goes out and gets the money while I literally stay home and do everything else. Cook, clean, take care of the kids, service his dick, and renew the licenses. This isn't the 1950s. He wasn't raised in my oppressive culture where women are men's property. So what's his excuse? Just when my happily ever after turned into I've had enough, along came the white knight who seduced me. I haven't felt this desired in, oh gosh, though I'm shocked it's with Art Voss. Perhaps you'd understand me better if it was David Beckham in his prime who waltzed into my life and stuck his tongue down my throat. Instead, I got Art, some barrel-chested Dutchman from Cape Town with salt and pepper hair and a dad bod befitting his mid-40s age. I don't know what happened or transpired in his marriage to put me in his arms, but when he talks dirty in his sexy South African's accent, a carnal desire stirs from deep within me and my moral switch flips. Another message pops up. So what was I doing in the dream, he asks, 8:44 a.m. The better question is, what am I doing? Feeling guilty, I guess. But here's the thing, I'm 36, pushing 40. I can't own my life right now, so I'm using Art's stick to keep me going. He's my escape. After 10 years of marriage, I've finally been broken. It's been a cycle of love and affection to put downs, energy sucking, and mind fuckery. Not to mention my husband also keeps me up all night with his snoring. Cheating is wrong, but I'm at the end of my rope. Art keeps me sane. Who doesn't want accolades and a man who treats you like a goddess? It's the best feeling in the world, and I don't know any woman who would deny that.
Thank you.
It's easier to write than say.
Thank you very much for that, Amy. And first prize goes to Sarah Collins Honenberger for Minding Henry Lewis. And I felt a real power in this manuscript. The author has such a natural feel for the environment and its people that the craft of writing just seems to disappear into a natural flow. It's a seamless intertwining of place, personality, and drama, along with the deft weavings of introspection and action in a lyrically written action scene. It also expertly employs 2 points of view, that of an adult child and an adult and a child witnessing the same tragedy. The author captures the complexity of the young girl's reasoning and the intensity of her inner life. It's also vivid and heartrending and filled with a deep humanity. With that, I now give you Sarah Collins Honenberger.
This is my 4th novel, actually, and it is about the friendship that develops between the teenage sister of the little boy that drowns and the white woman who is a cancer survivor. Across the swayback bend in the creek, a shout interrupted the peaceful afternoon. A girl's voice, young, a little unsure of itself, but loud enough for Celie to hear 100 yards downstream, where she stood in the unseasonably warm April sunshine, her arms crossed on the shovel handle. Just moments before, she'd rested her chin there to catch her breath, though she told herself it was to admire the afternoon light on the creek. the glittering path it carved through the marsh and out to the broader river. She would be 53 in another month. Birthdays were milestones she'd never paid much attention to until the cancer last year. While she blinked against the brightness, something else niggled in the back of her brain. Undefined and ethereal, she couldn't quite reach it. But as the sun penetrated and smoothed out the mental furrows, her mind let whatever it was float up and out of sight. When the girl's voice erupted again, louder still, a distant blur of arms circled to match the girl's instructions. In, swim in. A flash of white blazed at the end of the abandoned marina pier. The lanky shape was too far away to discern features. In Seeley's mind, the voice replayed itself, command more present than panic. But then the girl, whoever she was, jumped into the water, April water, that 3 weeks ago had been iced over. The splash shocked Seeley, and she blinked as if the spray had hit her skin. When the girl's head reappeared, she was paddling madly toward the dock, the yelling garbled, but sharper, more concern than before. Well beyond the girl's reach, a small dark circle was drifting into the channel. After she climbed back up on the dock, her head twisted at an awkward angle, her face toward the brown spot. No, here, toward me, swim in. This time her fear carried across the creek. Seeley's brain jerked forward. There was no adult there. She stared harder at the dark place in the water. In the next blink, she realized it might not be a dog, it might be a child. And even if it were a dog, she told herself as she dropped the shovel and started to run, they needed help. They were in trouble. By the bottom of the driveway, she was gasping for air, barely 1 month beyond the last radiation treatment. When she swung her leg over the fence, the other ankle caught. She lurched forward, clutched for the rail. Once righted, she trained her eyes to the ground in front of her sneakers and kept moving. Along the seawall, debris and half logs jumbled together in the reeds. While Seeley concentrated to avoid another fall, the girl's voice spiraled out of control. No, wait, don't! A wail swallowed before it could explode. By the time Seeley reached the place where the teenager stood, arm extended, finger pointing, Seeley's lungs burned. Her legs tingled. The girl's breath was hot on her bare skin. Hurry, the girl shook her whole arm for emphasis. My brother's right there. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you all for coming.
Bravo to all those novel writers. I want to read all 3 of those novels. They sound fantastic. And thank you to Donna. We've come to our final category of the afternoon. It's been a rich afternoon together. After this final category, we will turn off the recording, and we hope you'll stay for 10 or 15 minutes for a short meet and greet and informally chat with one another. I'm delighted now to introduce the judge of our last category of today, Sue Granzella, who will be sharing information and congratulations to the winners of the humor category. Sue, welcome.
I'm so happy that everyone has come. It's been such a wonderful time so far, and I've really enjoyed hearing all the reading from all these wonderful writers. So thank you very much for coming. I was probably the only kid, the only 8 or 9-year-old in my hometown who would go to sleep listening to Comedy Hour on AM radio. I've always just loved comedy. I love going to stand-up comedy. I've always appreciated comedy, but I don't know if I have ever appreciated it as much as I have during these last 2+ years. I've just been obsessed with comedy podcasts, tuning out a lot of the hard stuff, and just being grateful for comedy. I'm really grateful that I get to judge the humor category. It feeds me in a way that not much else does. So I'm really grateful to all of the people who entered, all of the people who've entered in the past. And I really enjoyed reading the work. I'd like to read the names of the people who got honorable mention. So Kim Allen Bigelow won for Pink Champagne, Melissa Chin for The Vegetable Garden, Kristen Frederick for Crossing Grandma Francis, Marcia Porter for Shortcut to Disaster, Maxine Rose Shore for How I Came to Fear French Doors, Porter Huddleston for Probably My Butt, Louise Moises for Pretty Bird, and then we have the third prize winner, Roderick Dwyer for Oscar and the Squirrel, and the second place winner, again, Porter Huddleston for Tillamookee. And Larry Hartley won first place for The Blink of an Eye. And before Larry reads, I'm so happy you came today, Larry. Before Larry reads, I just want to say a little bit about humor. I'm fully aware that humor is subjective. And some of the things that I do and don't find in an entry that kind of rises to the top, if its main attribute is that it's heartwarming, to me, that's nice, but it doesn't so much strike me as funny. If it's mostly cute, that doesn't strike me necessarily as funny. If it's just a story with one good punchline, that doesn't necessarily grab me. The kind of writing that grabs me for humor is something that has me steadily laughing, especially extra points if it builds. And that's what I found Larry Hartley's piece to do. So great job, Larry. And I'm so happy that you're here to read today. So here's Larry Hartley reading The Blink of an Eye.
Thank you. With so many wonderful, touching stories, I'm wondering if humor has a place here, but here I am. Many years ago, a dentist gave me a shot of Novocaine before working on a tooth. Apparently, some of it worked its way into the muscles to control eye movement, and my eye wouldn't blink for a couple of hours. That incident was the catalyst for this work of fiction. I'd like to share a few lines with you now. Cindy nodded. The doctor's going to give you another shot. Open wide, he said. I hesitated. My mind was screaming, you didn't wait long enough after that first shot. I remained tight-lipped. Glancing first at one another, then back at me, they appeared bewildered. Didn't seem to know what to do next, I assume. No one had ever ignored a direct order to open wide. Cindy took matters into her own hands, offering a professional visual of precisely what was expected of me. She opened wide and proceeded to point at her mouth. Like this, she said. I knew without a doubt he hadn't given that first shot enough time to work, and I started to say as much, but with pressure mounting, I reconsidered, asking myself, what do I have to lose? When it comes to dentists, is it remotely possible to be too numb? I said nothing and did as I was told. I opened wide. Less than 3 minutes after the second shot, I was vindicated. As I had predicted, my jaw was now dead as a doornail from that first shot. So I began formulating a way, without sounding too arrogant, to let him know that he had screwed up. Cindy broke my train of thought when she popped in to ask if we were beginning to feel numb yet. I blurted out, "You're really screwed up." She gave me a patronizing smile, wiped the drool from my chin, and said, "The doctor will be with you shortly." As I was finally beginning to relax again, I noticed a burning sensation in my eye. I felt around on my forehead and eventually located my eye directly below my eyebrow. My eyelid was stuck open. I pushed the eyelid closed and it wouldn't open. I pulled it open, it wouldn't close. Then it hit me, a staggering realization. Oh my God, my eye won't blink. Cindy, I bellowed. Cindy rushed in to find me blinking one eye by hand while the other eye darted around, confused, panic-stricken, and looking for answers. Apparently, a pro at deciphering incoherent babble. She immediately understood my ranting. Let me try, she said. She closed my eye, it wouldn't open. She opened my eye, it wouldn't close. Wow, that's wild, your eye won't blink. This has never happened before. That seemed to imply that just about everything else had happened before. Just calm down and relax, she said as she gave me a reassuring smile. I'll be right back. A few moments later, they were both hovering over me. So Cindy tells me the old eye won't blink. Let's have a look. He must have concluded that it wouldn't be prudent to simply concur with Cindy's diagnosis without conducting a thorough examination himself. He said as he opened and closed my eye with the concentration of a doctor performing brain surgery. Oh yeah, well, I suppose it's safe to say you're numb, ha ha. I didn't crack a smile, and I wouldn't have even if I could. Instead, I gave him the most intimidating evil eye that I could conjure up with my one remaining eye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Larry. It was really enjoyable, and I loved hearing you read it in person, sort of. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ditto from me, Larry. That was really a wonderful piece. Brought back a lot of memories from dentist chairs I've sat in over the years.
Thank you.
It scared the crap out of me.
We always like to end our program with the humor category because we've been sitting for a while and we want to kind of lift our spirits. And so that really lifted mine. The entire afternoon has been a really fantastic afternoon for me. I've loved the range of voices and subject matter and approaches. And I want to echo what all of the judges have said. We really hope you will enter the contest again next year. Encourage your friends and colleagues and neighbors and students to enter as well. It's a joy to read your work, and it's been a joy to listen to you reading today. So thank you all for being here. We're going to turn off the video now and hopefully chat and share congratulations. And thank you everybody for being here. Thanks so much.